Hey guys, Matt Pony Media here. I'm back. And I know it's been a while since I last made a video, but I just haven't had the time to do so for a while. But I finally got some time so I can sit down and make a proper video for you guys. And today I thought I'd take a look at this thing. This is the PowkiddyV90. At first glance, it resembles a lot like a Game Boy Advance SP. It says 64-bit game, 64-bit OS, support arcade, GBA, FC, SFC, Sega Game Series, supports multi-language, made in China, of course. There's a little image of what each of the controls do, little barcode, and then here shows you what you get in the box. You get the console, USB cable, and a user manual. Now, this shows 3 colors, but I've only ever seen the first 2, the yellow and the red here. I've never actually ever seen this black one here. So that very well could be a lie. And considering that this is from China, that very well could be the case. But there's nothing on the bottom, just a couple barcodes, one of which you can tell that I've already cut through to open this thing when I got it initially. This came from China. Arrived within, I want to say, a month and a half, give or take. But put that aside. We're not going to take a look at the unit just yet. We'll put that to the side as well. They really should have molded like a hole or something into this thing to be able to get it out easily like Apple does with their products. This is quite hard to get out. There we go. First of all, you get a little USB Type-C charging cable, about, I want to say, 2 to 4 inches. And you get your user manual, and there's nothing else in the box. Now, this being from China, it's most likely filled with Chinese and most likely very bad translated English, or English as we also know it. That's the Chinese side. Here we go. Here's English. This is just pretty much an overview of what was already in the box. Here's what you get. You get the game handheld, USB charging cable, instruction book, and lithium-ion battery. The battery is replaceable. If you want to read this, you can go ahead and pause the video. Same with that. That. Yeah, there's pretty much nothing else on here. Now we can get this stuff out of the way, and we can get directly into the main item itself. Okay, now, for comparison, here is a Game Boy Advance SP. You notice the immediate difference. One says, obviously, Nintendo, and one says Powkiddy. Now, they are about the same dimensions, but when I flip them around here, you'll start noticing some obvious differences. For instance, this has a GBA cart, and this doesn't have a cartridge slot of any kind. The sides here. And yes, this does have 4 shoulder buttons, opposed to 2 on the real one. We'll get this out of the way here. But here's a little space for, I believe it's a lanyard. Buttons are clicky. Here's a space for your lithium-ion battery. I believe that's a Nokia style battery, so and it is replaceable. I have checked. It is not the same as the Game Boy Advance SP battery, although it is very similar. Here is your TF slot, or SD card slot. I just have a cheap little 32 gig, come on autofocus. Little 32 gig SanDisk card in there. This houses both your firmware for the item itself, as well as the data storage. So it doesn't have any built-in storage whatsoever. Here's your on and off switch. You got to be careful with that, but I'll get more on that later. Here's your headphone jack and your USB Type-C charging port. It does have an insignia or inscription on the bottom to show you what they do. If my autofocus would like to actually work. Come on. There we go. Headphone jack and USB. And there's a volume right there. So there's your volume wheel. And nothing else pretty much to it. That's pretty much it. Let's get right into it. Yes, I did leave the screen protector on. I usually do. This D-pad does have a central pivot, but it's not very definite, so you can still kind of push it in. It is a bit squishy. You got your A, B, X, and Y, select and start, and this is your menu button. We'll get more on that in a bit. But go ahead and turn it on. I've actually put the custom firmware on this. It comes pre-packed with a different firmware and a different SD card because initially I didn't know that the specifics on this power switch here, which is you don't want to just flip it off. You want to make sure that you go over to settings here and then click the A button and then shut it off that way. Then you power it off. I didn't know that. This thing initially came with a 16 gig card from China. And I thought I could just power it off like a regular Game Boy Advance SP. You don't want to do that. As a result, I universally corrupted the SD card and had to get a new one and flash the custom firmware onto it. But I found out that was actually a good thing anyway, because it turns out the custom firmware not only has a few more emulators, but some of the emulators work better on the custom firmware as opposed to stock firmware. So I guess that was a bit of a blessing in disguise, so to speak. These are basically just like homebrew games or flash games. But there is one on here that is quite interesting that I will demo for you. I didn't even know this sucker existed until I got this and put the custom firmware on. Come on, autofocus. It's just saying that, like, freeware not produced by Sega. And then, there we go. I'm not going to go through this entire cutscene because it is quite long, but this is a Streets of Rage remake. Fan-made, as far as I can tell. In fact, I'm quite certain it's fan-made, but yeah. They went through a lot of effort adding stuff to this. But the intro is quite long, so I'm going to skip that. They've added quite a bit of stuff here. Also, the volume can get quite loud. I have it set at a decent volume right now. You got shops. As far as I can tell, most of the stuff in the shop has already been purchased. I pressed the wrong button. Let's turn that down just a smidge. You got characters, which seem to all to be automatically purchased. You got cheats, and you got some extras. Most of which seem to already be purchased by default. But go into the game here. This doesn't have any multiplayer, but there's no way to add another controller to this, so it'd be kind of pointless for this thing to have multiplayer. It's got quite a few extra characters compared to the original. See this guy, Shiva. Just skip that. By the way, this is only about $30 to $40. It's not that expensive, considering what it does. I'll put some links down below if you guys are interested in getting one yourself. Bit of a stutter there, to be honest. But yeah. Honestly, I think this guy should have been in the original. He's fucking awesome. Pardon my French. But that's that. Now let's go back to the settings real quick. Yeah, you can change the skin. This is not the skin that shows up by default when you put the custom firmware on. I put this on. This kind of resembles the original custom firmware's design. The default one is quite a bit different. But you got your settings here, language, date and time. No matter how many times I've set this date and time to the proper date, it always seems to reset itself every time I turn it off and on again. You got your screen timeout, power timeout, really good if you want to save some battery life. Then you got setting for the backlight. Now this defaults to 90, but I have it set to 70 because I want to save at least a bit of battery life. You got another way of controlling your volume. Remember selection, which seems to work just fine for most of the settings, like I said, except for the date and time. Input log, I'm not quite sure what that does, but get over to the... we'll do this one first. This will play, as you can see here, it says MPlayer. This will play your MP4s and MP3s, but I would not recommend doing so because although the MP3s, your MP3s will work in it, the MP4s don't really work. They play very slowly, like I want to say like 4 frames per second. It's not worth putting a MP4 on this. Your MP3s will work, but there's no media controls. You can't even back out of the song. You gotta let the entire song play out before you can select another one. And yeah, it's got a built-in calculator, file explorer, a few other things in here. Looks like to be a notepad. But we'll get over here. This is your Game Boy Color emulator. Your Game Boy emulator is down below, but you got Amiga, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, Super Nintendo. Now, I'm not quite sure why there's these two, because this is a Super Famicom emulator. And with the Famicom and Super Nintendo, the only thing that was really making it to where you could play, could or couldn't play a certain game from a certain region was the case itself. So I'm not quite sure why there's 2 separate emulators when they both effectively play the same thing, considering the Super Nintendo doesn't really have region locking. You got your Sega Master System and Game Gear. Now, in the original firmware, these two were actually separate emulators, but here they're combined. ColecoVision, Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis, Atari 2600, Atari Lynx, PC Engine, Arcade, or MAME. Probably wouldn't recommend doing a lot with the MAME emulator here, because unless you're playing a fairly low-grade arcade game, like maybe the arcade version of Golden Axe or something, or even Game Ground, probably not going to work all that well. FBA, I'm not quite sure what that is, but Neo Geo, DOS, Pokemon Mini, Wonder Swan. Now, I originally bought this for PlayStation because I saw a video on YouTube, and somebody said that this thing could play PlayStation games. Although it's only roughly about $40. So I thought, it's worth giving it a shot. So Vectrex, BitBoy, not quite sure what that is, or that C64, Game & Watch, not quite sure what that is. Pico -8, I'm not quite sure what that is. This is a Game Boy Rumble, which is peculiar because this thing doesn't actually have anything that simulates rumble or even a rumble feature in it, so it's weird that that's even on here as an option. There's your original Game Boy emulator and another BitBoy thing, which has the Java logo for some reason. But we'll go up here to NES, and we'll do regular Mario Bros. Now, so the NES thing here does have turbo. Your X and Y buttons are your turbo. As you can see there, I was rapidly jumping. You can tell that this plays and sounds pretty spot on. I missed that jump. Oh well. And now to get to the menu button. This thing, if you press it, and this doesn't matter what emulator you're in, it seems to work the same pretty much with every single emulator I've tried. You press it, and you get a little menu here. You got reset, flip disk, Now, the text of the emulator seems to change slightly. Like some will say, like, swap disk image, but you got save state, load state, screenshot, and settings. We'll just go to exit here. That's me pressing the wrong button. And we'll go out here, and we'll do Super Nintendo. And let's load Turtles in Time. Now, I do remember this one had a few graphical glitches, and the audio in the beginning is a little slow, but the actual gameplay is just fine. Let's get into this. Come on. Gotta go with the best turtle, Mikey. Now, at this first level, I've only noticed one graphical problem. And if you're familiar with this game, you'll be able to tell what that is. As you can tell, that Krang robot that usually appears in the background that zaps you with lasers from its eyes is not showing. As you can tell, everything else seems to work just fine. And this is the only Super Nintendo game I played that has any sort of graphical glitch. And it could just be this ROM. My ROM might be faulty, but, you know. But that's that. You see this one has quite a few more options. Even has option for like frame skip and whatnot. Unless you're doing like PlayStation or something, frame skip's really not that important. Or unless you're doing something else that's almost as powerful as PlayStation. Like some of the other ones like MAME might require it depending on the game you're playing. But let's go down to this one here. Ranma. Just a little fighting game. Now this one I haven't noticed any graphical glitches or sound issues whatsoever. The only problem with this game is that I suck at it. And that has mostly to do with the fact that I've never really played this game. Not extensively, anyway. Let's go with Ukyo Kawonji. Huh. Don't remember that guy's name. Oh, it's right there. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm probably going to get my ass kicked. Alright. I actually won. Well, that's Ranma Hard Battles, or Battle, I think is what it's called, Hard Battle. And it would help if I press the right button. Oh, get out of that. And as far as I can tell, this just plays the same thing, so I'm going to skip over that. We'll go to Mega Drive, or Genesis. Sonic 1. Why not? It's usually the best game to test, because a lot of these fake, or not fake, but cheap emulation boxes, as you can see, there's pretty much the same kind of selection. Usually has a hard time with Genesis games. If you guys remember those @games things, I did not press the start button. But this seems to play them pretty much identical to the real Sega Genesis, so that's pretty neat. Looks like there's a bit of motion blur on camera, but trust me, it's not. There's really no motion blur, it's just camera's having a hard time keeping up with the fast motion of this game. Not doing too well here, but... How the hell did I manage that? Thought for sure I was going to get hit there. You can tell, no graphical glitches. Sounds pretty much spot on to the original. And at the perfect speed. That's that. Load another Genesis game here. Yeah, I got a few ROM hacks on here. This will play your ROM hacks just fine with no issues. So you shouldn't have any problem if you want to load a ROM hack or something. Let's load Kid Chameleon. Difficult game, but a fun one at the same time. You can tell this is kind of similar to Mario. In fact, I would happen to guess that Sega kind of took inspiration from the original Mario Brothers game when they made this one. Considering much like Mario, you break blocks to get power-ups, and your main method of attacking without a power-up is to stomp on them. So yeah, this is very much like Mario Bros. Even to the point where it has a turn-based multiplayer, just like Mario Bros. But that's that. Running a little on time, so I'm trying to speed it along here. And we'll do Game Boy Advance. Load Lexia Goku 2. Yeah, this is one of those ROM files I downloaded that has a hack true. People that dumped this ROM. You saw Game Boy Advance sounds perfectly. That's a little loud. Let me turn that down for you guys. That's better. Now, this does save. I've noticed some emulators, depending on the game, may have a little slight issue with saving, but for the most part, seems to be just fine. But if the game you're playing on the emulator that you're trying on this thing, for whatever reason, won't keep your save, I have noticed that the save state feature works on pretty much every emulator and is consistently worked for me. So, at least there is a backup. Worst case scenario, if your game isn't saving with the built-in battery, just use the save state. That should work just fine for you. As you can tell, this works just fine. And again, a slightly different style selection, but pretty much all the same stuff. And we'll get out of there. And the last emulator I'm going to showcase will be PlayStation. And we'll do a game that is fairly powerful for this thing, to the point where you have to use the frame skip option. I will point out there are two games I've noticed that won't run on this properly. That being Stuart Little 2 and Digimon Rumble Arena. Stuart Little 2 will load, but as soon as you get to the menu card screen where it tries to load your data, the screen goes black. You can still hear the audio just fine, but you can't do anything because you can't see anything. Rumble Arena, however, won't load, period, no matter what I've tried. Everything else seems to work just fine, except Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, for whatever reason, like I mentioned with the whole battery issue, it won't keep its save. But like I said, just use the save state, which should be just fine for you. But we'll load Spider-Man here. I don't have a built-in save on this, but I do have a save state. Now, there's a problem when it comes to PlayStation for me, because for whatever reason, my R2 and L2 buttons do not work. So I can't properly web swing with the default buttons, because Spider-Man naturally web swings as long as you're not in this game's super easy mode, known as kid mode. You have to use the R2 to web swing. But my R2 doesn't work. But luckily, the emulator allows you to configure the controls. In fact, as far as I can tell, every emulator gives you that option. But I already have a save state here, so we'll just go, if I press the right button. It does take a little bit to load the save state, but don't worry, it's not crashing. It just takes a bit. As you can see here, it plays alright. But yeah, it seemed to have not saved my settings, so I can't web swing right now, but and I could change the settings of web swing over there, but I don't want to waste your guys' time. But yeah, as you can see, it does work just fine. And the fact that this plays PlayStation, it's only $40, is quite frankly impressive, considering just a few years ago, a $40 little box like this would have gotten you pretty much a Famiclone that had a bunch of poorly ported, illegal ports of NES games, and some of which may have played like utter ass on top of that, if not all of them. But you know, for this being only about $40, it's quite impressive considering what it can do. You know, I'll just quickly controls layer 1. Let me just go to R1. There we go. Got that on the right button. I don't know why, but it's not letting me web swing, but it's alright. Now we'll try out Spyro 3 here. I'll probably have to figure out why that thing's not letting me web swing at a later date, but overall, for the price you pay for it, and considering what it can do, even though it won't do everything, 100%, what it can do for the price you pay is definitely worth it. Now, I do have a save state, but just do that, be quicker. Now, I do have the frame skip for the emulator set to skip 2. It defaults to off. I think the highest you can go is 3 frame skips. But I have it set to 2. 3 makes it run a little jittery. So, but yeah. As you can tell here, this game plays pretty much spot on to the original. I will say, though, that at least with this game, the D-pad being so smushy kind of works against it. So, for 3D platformers, this D-pad may not be the most ideal. But it does technically work, so it is definitely playable. But it is a little hard to get used to.
Yo, Spyro, I just found one of those portal thingamajigs that leads to a different world, but you'll have to glide to get across to it. Follow me.
But yeah, just wanted to give you a demo of the sound there. It sounds pretty spot on, but that's PlayStation. That will pretty much do it for this video. Oop, I did not mean to do that. I went back into the game by mistake. I pressed the wrong button. Come on. But yeah, just remember that when you go to shut it off like this. Don't just flip the switch. Also, I should point out that putting games on this thing was a bit of a pain in the butt, because by the way, and up until you flip that switch, that light will always be on, and you can drain the battery if you forget to flip that switch, like I've done a couple times. But yeah, putting games on it was a bit of a pain in the butt, because it turns out if you don't have a Windows 10 computer, like I really don't, all I have is that GPD Win thing that has Windows 10 on it. So, and it has quite the small screen, so it's a bit of a pain to put games on it, because of the way that thing is flashed. It uses the first partition for the firmware and the second partition for storage, but only Windows 10 will automatically recognize the second partition and mount it. So, but that's just a problem with me. Everyone else should be fine. But that will do it for this video. This has been Mad Pony Media. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.